So before we start, many people have been asking me where they can buy a paperback version of How to Debate the Left on Islam. And after a lot of technical hassle and delay, it is finally available on Amazon.com and on Lulu.com. And I'd like to thank everyone for the support. It's really been great, especially the support coming from the UK and from the Netherlands has been great. And from Australia, which is kinda unexpected, so that's really awesome. So as I already mentioned in some of my other videos, the Netherlands is an indoctrinated society. Starting from a very young age, people are getting raised on the ideology of political correctness. This starts at elementary school, continues through high school, and when young people decide to go study anything else than beta science, it continues at university. In elementary school, children learn everything about colonialism and how evil the West is because of it. Then they learn everything about the Holocaust and how dangerous the right wing is because of it. And this is very selective because while they learn everything about the dangers of right-wing extremism, they don't learn anything about the dangers of left-wing extremism. And this might seem like a small detail, but it actually has major consequences, and these consequences can now be seen. Most young people in the Netherlands have this idea in their head that the right wing is bad and the left wing is good. If you're from the Netherlands yourself, the infamous statement, rechts is slecht, links is goed, probably sounds familiar to you. The right wing is bad and the left wing is good. Good versus bad. And this idea is actually potentially dangerous. Coming from a position of moral superiority, politically correct individuals often say that we shouldn't forget the lessons of the 20th century. What they don't seem to realize is that the 20th century wasn't just the horrible story of the far right. It was also a horrible story of the far left.
Раньше буржуазия позволяла себе либеральничать. Отстаивала буржуазно-демократические свободы и тем создавала себе популярность в народе. Теперь от либерализма не осталось и следа. Нет больше так называемой свободы личности. Права личности признаются теперь только за теми, у которых есть капитал. А все прочие граждане считаются сырым человеческим материалом, пригодным лишь для эксплуатации. Растоптан принцип равенства людей и наций. Он заменен принципом полноправия эксплуататорского меньшинства и бесправием эксплуатируемого большинства граждан. Знамя буржуазно-демократических свобод выброшено за борт. Я думаю, что это знамя придется поднять вам, представителям коммунистических демократических партий, и понести его вперед, если хотите собрать вокруг себя большинство народа. Больше некому его поднять.
Anyway, back to the Netherlands. Dutch universities are politically correct indoctrination machines. Lecturers are often indoctrinated with political correctness themselves and pass this doctrine on to their students. The social sciences are basically far-left indoctrination camps. And this can especially be seen at the University of Amsterdam. This university spends €375,000 a year on a diversity policy. Earlier this year they have been recruiting for a so-called diversity officer. And of course, diversity of political opinion isn't encouraged. Can a student who has voted for Geert Wilders admit that freely at this university? It will probably lead to social rejection and demonization. At this university a few months ago, there was a case of a Muslim researcher supporting ISIS and threatening a fellow Muslim who wanted to be more liberal. So this is the type of diversity that they spend €375,000 a year on. Or here. Current political debate, societal challenges and cultural developments inform or contribute to our research agenda. Right. So do they also talk about the dangers of Muslim migration due to the beliefs that Muslim migrants tend to have as a result of Islam? And how the media is actively covering up cases of European women getting raped by Muslim migrants? Of course not. Or this one. Amsterdam Center for Middle Eastern Studies. So do they also talk about the Christians who are getting killed in the Middle East and how the majority of the population supports stoning women to death for adultery? Of course not. All this is nonsense. A member of the new Dutch right-wing party, Forum for Democracy, has criticized the University of Amsterdam for being a leftist propaganda machine, to which a lecturer from the University of Amsterdam, who is apparently a so-called cultural anthropologist, then replied by saying that that's an exaggeration. He then added that intellectuals like Karl Marx are also criticized at the university. A quick look at this guy's Twitter profile is enough to conclude that the man himself is a typical social justice warrior, anti-racism, anti-Israel, anti-white people, protects Islam, doesn't like the professor who defended Geert Wilders, doesn't like Mr. Baudet from the new Dutch right-wing body, is a supporter of the Netherlands' greatest self-proclaimed victim, who also seems to have a problem with white people. And to conclude that this man is not representing a small group of ideologues, you just have to realize that he was elected Lecturer of the Year in 2014 by the students. This is how the ideology of political correctness is being passed on to the next generation, by people who don't have any real knowledge themselves to really know what they're talking about, and what the real-world consequences of their ideas are. It is also not a surprise that the University of Amsterdam organizes events related to Marxism, such as a Marxism afternoon or the so-called Marxism festival that they organize every year. And this event doesn't attract 85-year-old communists. It's an event of young people. We're all Palestinians. Capitalism basta. Stop the smear campaign against Muslims. No room for racism. And if you look at the list of speakers at this event, it is shocking. It is a coalition of far-left activists and Muslim activists. Muslim activists who are not speaking out against ISIS or trying to fight against the treatment of Christians and unbelievers in Islamic countries, but instead they are fighting against Israel, against the West, and against their very host countries. Your country, my country. Muslim activists, such as this man, Diab Abu Yahya, a man who's related to Sharia for Belgium, openly defending Sharia, who was called one of the best studies on radical Islam in Europe, pseudoscience, and he has admitted to have felt euphoric when he saw the World Trade Center collapse. What more does a person have to admit? Or here, a young leftist activist who has called for throwing 500 stones at Geert Wilders. The unholy alliance between political correctness and Islam is diabolical, people. And it can be seen right here. Organized by the University of Amsterdam. A university. A place that should be about free thinking, reason, truth-seeking. But no. So if you're a parent, you might want to make sure that your children don't go study at this University of Amsterdam. What these politically correct far-left people have in common with these Muslim activists is that they both hate the West. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Indoctrinated children working with Muslim activists. That is what this place is. And this brings me back to my earlier point about the Dutch education system. Because these phenomena ultimately are products of the Dutch education system. These children weren't just never taught about the dangers of Islam, but they also weren't taught about the dangers of the far left. So why is Marxism dangerous? Well, original Marxism made a distinction between the workers, the proletariat, and the owners, the bourgeois. The resources are unequally divided between these two groups, and according to the Marxism ideology, this is because the owners are oppressing the workers. So there's an oppressor and there is an oppressed, and this must be a problem. And the solution to this problem is to dramatically change the entire society, just to create equality of outcome between these groups. Not equality of opportunity, but equality of outcome. This doesn't only destroy people's motivation, but also reduces people to being mere members of the group that they belong to, and creates a situation where angry, unsuccessful people finally get their chance to express their frustrations to their supposed oppressors. So even though the original two groups were the workers and the owners, you can basically also apply this very same process to other groups, such as based on ethnicity, sex, level of income, etc. For example, there are more men working at the top of companies than women. So there's a difference, and this difference is then interpreted as being an oppressor versus oppressed situation. So it must be because the men are oppressing the women. So men are the oppressors and women are the oppressed. So why are there more men working in chemical engineering than women? Oppression. Why are there more non-Muslim Nobel Prize winners than Muslim Nobel Prize winners? Oppression. Why do European Americans make more money than African Americans? Oppression. And to many people who are incapable of engaging in critical thinking, this way of looking at the world is very attractive because it makes them feel as if they know everything and that they have the solution to every problem. If all that you know and understand is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. Even very complex problems look like a simple nail that just needs some hammering. And they can also feel very good about themselves and very morally superior, because they think they are standing up for the oppressed. And this is also why this is a very attractive ideology for young people who are already indoctrinated with political correctness. To young millennials who were raised in a horribly bad education system, while growing up in a country where the media is a politically correct propaganda machine, and everyone who disagrees with the politically correct worldview is either demonized, legally prosecuted, or even killed. This type of new Marxism just seems to be the next step in the natural process of progression. So they also think that they are very quote-unquote progressive. And this is dangerous because we've already seen what things like class guilt as a mere result of being part of a so-called oppressive group can lead to. We've already seen what an endless strive for equality of outcome can lead to. The equality of outcome will never be reached. It is a bottomless pit. Literally all cases where Marxism was implemented led to a disaster of human suffering. Why don't these children know this? Because they weren't taught it in school. They were taught the Second World War and colonialism, so that they feel guilty. But they weren't taught about the far left. And then they went to university where they came into contact with postmodernism and fields of study that are entirely based on politically correct dogma. Gender studies, African studies, the faculty of humanities. And this becomes even more disastrous if you add Islam to the mix and identify Islam or Muslims as quote-unquote oppressed, even though Islam is currently the #1 ideology on the entire planet that oppresses women, Christians, homosexuals, unbelievers, and many other groups, which might be done by a minority, but is supported by the majority. What do these children even think this Jab Abu Yahya wants to do with our society, or with them? But they aren't able to see this because they're indoctrinated and have never learned how to think. So this is what the Netherlands is turning into, with the main university of its capital having turned into a propaganda machine for dysfunctional ideologies and irrational dogma, a regressive pithole of anti-Western sentiments, and a perfect ally for Muslim activists. This is Paul from debatetheleft.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and never stop debating the left on Islam. And if your children or yourself are about to choose a university, think it through. Figure it out. Choosing the right university has never been more important than it is today. There is a difference between education and indoctrination. The former improves Western civilization. The latter will inevitably take Western civilization down.